And we are live. Thanks for joining us here in the Storycraft Cafe. I am your host, Hank Garner. Today, I am super excited to have Amber and Danielle Brown. They are the authors of the brand new, just releasing today book, Zetas Till We Die. What a fun thriller this is. It makes you always feel a little weird when you say what a fun thriller when there are dead bodies that that show up, but what a great page turner of a read this is. Amber and Danielle, thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this since I read the pre-release arc that I got from your publisher. I don't know, over a month ago, I guess, and I've been waiting for release day so we could talk about it.
Thank
I always love to start the conversation with a fun sort of icebreaker question, and one question that I love to ask people is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or storyteller? And Danielle, on my left, without the sleeves, Danielle, I'll throw that question to you first. What is your first memory?
Well, it's probably gonna be the same thing, but we joined a book club in, I would say, was it ninth grade? Yeah, ninth grade for the first time, and I really didn't want to do it because I was not into reading at all. It was just all of our friends joined, and that was pretty much the only after school activity that wasn't a sport. And so we joined and ended up liking all the books. We read, I think, one book a week, and we just got obsessed. And oh my God, it's so crazy. We used to write by hand in a binder full of loose leaf paper and just write a whole story
in the back of class.
Yeah, in back of class. And then we let all our friends read it. I just can't even begin to think of how bad it was. But yeah, that was pretty much when we started writing. But then in college, we were like, you know what? I feel like we could actually make this a career. I feel like in college is where we started taking it seriously, like trying to look into publishing and everything. But I would say the impetus was just being jealous of other people who had books out, and we're like, we can do that. And then college, it was like we majored in journalism, and I knew I didn't want to do that, and I was just like, well, what else could we do that's adjacent? And so that's what we decided.
And I would say that's definitely when we decided to be, I would say, professional writers. But our first experience of just being writers, I'm saying I didn't know this back then, but we were, I guess, like every little girl, we were obsessed with Barbie. But we didn't do Barbie the way other girls did Barbie. Like they just wanted to, dress them up and chop the clothes off, chop their hair, break their arm, that stuff. We did that too. But the main thing, like we were so lucky because we had each other, but we would just sit together literally all day, like during the summer, just by ourselves and have the two dolls. And she comes up with she wants her dolls to say, I come up with what I want my dolls to say, and then they interact. And so it was almost like doing a little stage play with the dolls. And as we got older, obviously we grew out of Barbie. So now I realize like we just needed something to really just replace that. Mm-hmm. And writing became that.
I love it. When did you guys become obsessed with thrillers? And what is it about the thriller genre that you think not only appeals to you, but thrillers are one of the hottest genres right now. As from books to TV series. My wife and I binged this new Netflix series that came out over the weekend. The Perfect Couple, I think it's called.
Okay, I saw that. We didn't get a chance to watch it yet.
We were just like, isn't that a book? But I'm not sure about it.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. You'll love it. But what do you think it is about? Well, first, what is it that appeals to you about thrillers? But what do you think it is that kind of latches onto our cultural consciousness about these stories? Where things are not quite right, even if they look like it on the outside.
I think so. Definitely, the book that got us started was Eric Jerome Dickey. Was this author who we actually read in the book club? I think.
And who was it again? I'm sorry.
Eric Jerome Dickey.
Okay.
He wrote basically kind of like women's books back then. Like the categories weren't so defined, but then once he became this super best-selling author, he started veering into, I think, what was his real passion. And he wrote this book called Sleeping with Strangers, and it took place in Europe, I think, London. Mm-hmm. And it was just really, really fast-paced, and it was still, I think, geared towards women. so what thrillers, a lot of thrillers have become like since Gone Girl, like she really did it and then nailed it. But it just had guns and it had action, it had drama, it had suspense, and I was just like, I didn't understand at this point that that's a thriller, but that's what got it started. And I got her to read the book, and then she got obsessed with it, and so that transition kind of came natural. But I think my theory, besides that thrillers are fun and stuff like that, I think if you look at a genre like romance, it's all about tropes and it's all about like a formula, and a lot of thrillers follow that same thing. And romances, I think, of all time are like always, look at Jane Austen, like the most read genre, especially with women. And I think it's because of that, because they want the happily ever after, but in the thriller you just want a big twist. It's the same thing as kind of like the whole point of the book is the ending. And I think that formula of, so romances, two characters are going to fall in love, they're going to have a hiccup towards the end, and then they're going to get back together and live happily ever after. But what a thriller is, whatever amount of characters it is, but there's something really bad happening, there's going to be dead bodies, and by the end I'm going to trick you. Yes. And I think so you read it in the same way.
Yeah. And also you also get a very satisfying ending. So with the romance, it'll be a love story, and they're back together. But for thrillers, it's justice. And I feel like in real life, you don't always get that. But in the thriller, you always know who the bad guy is. And I think that's just really satisfying. Yeah.
Okay, so I've gotten to know a lot of romance authors over the years of doing this podcast. And one thing that they're adamant about, and romance readers, you must have a happily ever after or an HFN, a happy for now. It must end on sunshine and roses, somehow, some way. It doesn't matter if the trope is worn out. You have to have it. And if you don't have it, you cannot call yourself a romance author.
Sure.
Thriller, like you just alluded to, is not, and I hate to say it like this because it's going to sound like I'm denigrating romance writers and readers, and I'm not at all. But it's a fact that these tropes have to happen to occupy that space. Thrillers don't. You don't know what kind of ending you're gonna. And you said that what you're looking for in thrillers is justice. Justice can look very different in a lot of books. Sometimes it's a dark night of the soul, and you end on the sun peeking through, and that sort of thing. Others, you're just almost devastated at the end. Your mouth is open. Yeah, you may have solved the mystery if it were, but it's not all sunshine. Sometimes it's still devastating at the end. Do you feel I guess what I'm asking, when you start writing a story, do you have an ending in mind? And I don't necessarily mean a resolution, but are you looking to write toward a feeling or a certain emotion? Do you know kind of where that emotionally is going to land at the end?
I would say we pretty much know the twist, we know the killer and all that. And like you said, we don't necessarily have a resolution. Like we don't write a very strict outline that we stick to, anything like that.
Yeah.
We let the story go where it needs to go, and we make amendments along the way. So sometimes some stories we might have thought it might have ended up A and it ended up at C, and that's totally fine. And as far as theme, we definitely have a theme because that's what's driving the entire plot.
Okay.
We don't like it to be like just very plot driven and no character development and no story. The story is always the most important. The thriller, not formula, but just the structure of a thriller just makes it more fun and exciting. But it all goes back to story.
Interesting. Theme is something that I find very interesting because in my personal writing, sometimes I have something that I'm kind of mulling in the back of my head, and a story comes out of that almost as a way for me to process what I'm thinking about. And other times I'm not thinking about a theme at all, but when I'm writing at the end of the process, I can look back and I can think, oh my gosh, that was there all the time. How did I not
Oh
see
yeah,
it from the
yeah,
beginning? It comes. It's almost like your subconscious just
yeah.
working on something.
Mhm.
Do you always have that theme kind of forefront of your
No, not
mind?
at the beginning.
Yeah.
Definitely not at the beginning. I would say it would probably come most likely a few chapters into the draft, and
Yeah.
so we will outline, um, using that term loosely,
Very loosely.
Yeah.
but we have a paragraph for every scene that will probably be in the book.
Okay.
But it's mainly based around plot points, just so we don't get to page 50 and be like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Right.
And like she said, we make a lot of amendments along the way, and so theme usually arises out of some type of conflict that we might not have seen. So the story is going to have the main conflict around whatever person is dead or who's missing or something like that. But the conflict between characters is usually, I think, where we're deriving some theme. Yeah. And that would come during the drafting and not prior, or it come if the story has multiple themes, most likely the other themes came in the rewriting process.
Yeah.
Gotcha. You say that you loosely outline, but if you work out a paragraph for each chapter, some pantsers would think, "Oh my gosh,
Oh yeah, I know.
that's a detailed outline."
Especially working as a team.
I would think, not since we've been writing together, but
we have to be on the same page.
Have to be on the same page so we know what we're doing. And it would just give me too much anxiety. I get them who do it. This is the thing. I think the more you write, the less of a pantser you become.
Yeah.
Just because I think when I used to do that, so I was more so in college and stuff like that when it wasn't super serious yet. I was totally pantsing, and I would do that thing, especially with a thriller. It's honestly easier to pants certain genres. But the thriller, it's like you have to know where you're going. And there's so many things that you have to set up and then pay off that it's just really, really hard to not know what you're doing. And so I think that was probably the impetus to start outlining is when I started getting to more thrillers or more mysteries that were in plots and stuff like that. And then now I'm just so used to it that I could be writing a romance that to me is like probably the least important that you have to plot out. And I still need to know where I'm going.
Yeah.
Well,
and I feel it helps you write faster. That's really it. Like once we outline like that, the first draft, second draft is very, very, very fast.
Yeah. I have a friend that I quote all the time who said this to me. He was a hardcore outliner, and early in my writing career, I was, I like to think of myself as a pantser, although I was kind of a hybrid in there. And he told me one day, he said, look, everyone is an outliner. It's just, are you going to outline before you write the book?
That's true.
Or after you finish that first draft, are you then going to take this jumbled mess and try to whip it into shape?
That's true.
And you're 100% right. Thrillers are one of those things that you need to think about it ahead of time, because you've got the twist that you've got to work in. You've got red herrings. You need to misdirect the reader. And if you're not thinking about those things ahead of time, you're going to have a mess on your hands, at the end.
And I'm not I can't do the thing where, if our draft was like our first draft, like the literal first time that we finish, and we could say every word is there.
Yeah.
Give or take, because I like to put stuff in parentheses. If I don't know what I want to go there, I'll just say, she says something cool here, whatever. Yeah. But once we get to that thing, I could never, just on an anxiety level, have to go back and sift through junk. So I think our first drafts are really, really clean. But that's, like I said, that's more so from experience, from us writing separately, because we wrote separately until I think 2020. So we wrote separately for most of our life, but then because of the nature of the dual relationship, we do have to be on the same page, and that helped us even more get clear about what was going to be there.
Yeah.
But I need total in our house, everything. It just needs to be neat. So the drafting comes out neat too. And I just feel like the chaos, like, it doesn't have to be chaos even if you don't know everything, because even though I'm saying we're outlining stuff, there is a lot that we don't know. Especially like with our first book, someone had to do it. It was a lot of stuff we didn't know. Like you're gonna still discover a lot during the drafting.
Right. There's still freedom in it, so might as well
have
everything you can. Yeah.
I think people get hung up, and I know this was me as well, is that when they start thinking about outlining, they think of 8th grade English.
Yeah. You could do
Roman numeral 1 and then capital A, and it's not like that at all. But I think that's where the anxiety comes from for so many people, and they just run away from it. And it doesn't have to be that way.
It actually only helps.
Right. The fact that you can have a roadmap that still allows you, like you said, the freedom to discover stuff as you go without getting off track is like the best of all worlds.
Yeah. When I see people and they'll say stuff like, you know, the hardest part, let's say, of each day is just sitting in front of the laptop and starting to write. I think gets eliminated at least 90% if you know what you have to write. And then I don't know, maybe some people think this is crazy. I've told people this and they get, ooh, but I don't always write in chronological order. And especially if I'm writing stuff by myself. When we write together, I kind of do. But when I write by myself, I will literally wake up and be like, oh, what do I want to write? What's coming? And I'll just jump to whatever scene I know is there. Because I outline, so I do know every scene that most likely will be there, or at least what needs to be there will probably add some more stuff. And so I feel like that adds to the fun. So it will be easier to just start if you're like, nope, I want to write that scene with the fight because I have the visual in my head and I'm just going to do that. And then you'll probably get another visual for another scene. And then now you done wrote 16. So I feel like people like shouldn't worry about chronological order, but the only way you can do that is if you don't. Is if you do have a good outline.
Yeah. Have a plan ahead of time. Have you ever had a situation where writing out of order helped to unlock a little problem that maybe came earlier in the book that you weren't sure how to work out, but then writing this thing down the road, say, oh,
I'm sure it has.
This helps,
I'm sure it has. Yeah, I can't think of a specific instance.
Yeah,
but I know there's been plenty of times where I've jumped to something just out of excitement and then I wrote it and then I go, oh, wait, so now I know for chapter 3, I can plant this and that'll pay off. So what do you call it? Plant and payoff. That always helps. Yeah. It also helps with character. Because, okay, think about it like this. I used to be I still get, ooh, because we live in LA, so it's a lot of Hollywood talk, and I will get so like itchy when actors have to say, "Oh, our first day of set, we had to do the sex scene," or "Our first day on set, we did the last scene of the movie," and I was just like, "How do you do that?" Because they have to be so attuned to their emotions when they're doing the scene, and usually the ending is a totally different emotion than the beginning of the movie, and then they say they shoot it out of order, and it's just like it just sounded like chaos, and I'm like, "Oh, I do that." So. I forgot what movie it was, but it was some popular older movie. And the actor just said, by us shooting that last scene, I knew then what I needed to do for the beginning. So I think it definitely helps. Even if you can't pinpoint it, it helps.
Yeah. I've never thought about of it that way, but it's all mindset, I guess, in the end. You said that both of you used to write separately, and then 2020 happened, and you started co-writing. What was the impetus for you to do this together? And was there anxiety of sharing this work in progress? I know you guys are twins, and I believe that you live together, so there's probably a lot of shared things. But to a lot of people, writing is very protective. It's the one thing that you have to yourself, at least until it's finished. But did you guys deal with that at all?
I would say, going on the vulnerability part, no. Even though if you asked me, I would have said, yeah, I don't want to read it. So I think the reason why it works is the same, echoes the same in our larger relationship, is what's good for me is good for her. And so, and she's just not judging it. So I could even leave her a note and say, I know this is trash, just fix it. Like, we're working on it together. It's no competition. It's no, I want my parts to be better than you. It's nothing like that. It's literally like, we need to write the best story we can do. And so if you have a scene that you couldn't write, I'll write it. Who cares? If you want to just write, some, what do you call that? Like if you write dialogue, but it's not going to stay. Some filler dialogue, and you want me to rewrite it, do that. So I think our communication is good in that way. And but if I write something on my own, I don't let her read it. I don't want her to judge it because she's harsh, and since it's not her thing,
one time,
since it's not her thing, she can, I guess, look at it differently. And I don't know, like, of course she still wants my thing to be good, but it's not hers. So right. I don't know. Actually, it's been so long since she's read something of mine and she gave me feedback that maybe you won't be harsh. I don't know. But to the other point about the
why did we start writing?
Yeah, why did we start? Specifically to 2020 was just that we were both home, and right. I had at that point quit books. So we had I made us move to LA in 2018 to do screenwriting because I was just done with books. I had been working, I think 6 years straight. Yeah, 6 years straight trying to get stuff published. I had written a manuscript every year. I queried. I did everything, and it just wasn't working. And I just thought, first of all, I didn't know what screenwriting was at that point. I honestly just thought for movie and TV shows, directors wrote the scripts. Like I just didn't understand it. So someone told me what it was, and I was like, oh, I'll just do that. So I just quit books for like 2 years. It only lasted 2 years. And then I had this one idea, and like the very beginning of what became the first book. And I literally woke up, sat on the couch in my sister's room, and I was like, what do you think of this? And then she started, which she never does, because I told you she's harsh. So she started pitching back plot points and ideas and character stuff. And this was in September, and Hollywood had just opened back up, and I was supposed to go to work like the next week. So I was like, I'm really not going to have time to write this, so why don't we just write it together? And it gets so fuzzy now. I don't remember the conversation. Were you like 100% in when I first said that?
I really liked the idea because she was thinking about it as a script, and I was like, yeah, you should do it. And then she's like, well, maybe we can make it to a book. And I was like, I don't know, because at that point also I didn't quit books, but I was just so done with it. I was feeling so demoralized and down. Yeah. I was just like, I really feel like I'm not a quitter, but I need to move on. Like I need to get a regular job. I need to get serious because this is never going to work out.
Do you remember also, this is September, in October, we had just gotten this other really big rejection. Like she had it for months and kept saying, no. And then like she had the full and she used it. And then she just was like, actually, no. Yeah. And this was like a week before that. And so we were really down and out.
So I was like, yes, I like the idea, but I really don't want to write right now. But it was 2020, pandemic had just like happened, and there was something to do. Couldn't go to work, so I was just like, fine, we'll just do it. And it ended up being a very fun experience. Like it came out really easily. We did it really fast, like a month. And then we got to editing. Now the editing was a little rough at first because we had to learn how to collaborate in a Google document. So there was a lot of, well, I want this, I think this is better. But we had to learn through that whole project how to communicate nicely and kindly and to
let go.
Let go of your darlings, basically. Well, I really like this plot point, but she doesn't think it's wrong. You have to let it go because it's for the greater good. And now, like I said, we've worked on 4 books together. So that process has smoothed out significantly, but at first it was a little rough. We were fighting.
I know quite a few writing duos who write together, and I'm thinking specifically of like Lynn and Valerie Constantine, who write together as Liv Constantine, and they talk about as the project goes on and more revisions happen, that it becomes difficult to pick out which scenes Lynn wrote, which ones Valerie wrote, because it almost becomes like Liv Constantine is this third person in the relationship, and her voice is who you wind up with at the end. You guys publish as Amber and Danielle, but do you ever feel like that there's a third person that emerges from that this collective voice comes out of your writing relationship?
Yeah, I
Definitely.
never thought of it as a third voice, but 100%. Our mom literally just texted us some paragraph or something, and she was like, "Who wrote this?" She always wants to know who wrote something.
Yeah, she pick out one line. Oh my god, who wrote this? I'm like,
There's no way I could ever tell you. It might be one line of dialogue.
If it's a really, really snazzy line,
Yeah.
it's probably Amber's.
No, but dialogue is a little bit easier to parse through. I still can't remember because she could have changed one word in the sentence. I don't know.
Right.
But the overall narrative and even the story, no idea. It's just a complete fusing, and yeah, I couldn't even put money on it. Sometimes it's like with us. Our mom will send an old picture of us as kids, like, which one is Danielle? And I'm like, you were there. Why would I know? I literally don't know. We look very, very identical as kids. Now we don't look that similar, but it's the same feeling. I'm just like, I have no idea. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. The new book, Zetas Till We Die. This is an interesting book because we're dealing with the idea of sisterhood, but this kind of chosen sisterhood, this sorority sisterhood, which is interesting coming from a pair of sisters, twin sisters, writing about this other kind of sisterhood relationship. And it's so much more than that, but that's just kind of the surface thing that struck me. That how do you guys think about like? Yeah, I hate the question, where do your ideas come from? It's so trite because with writers, ideas are everywhere, but there's something about that idea that floats a little higher than the rest. And you're like, I think there's something there that, what was it about this idea that stood out to you that made you think there's something to this?
Yeah, so just on this whole sisterhood thing, we really wanted to be intentional about that. We thought, I've never read a book with a black sorority in it. Never. So I was like, we definitely want to do that, like as a intentional thing. And then also commentary on sisterhood, because it's this whole thing, especially amongst like women. It's like, oh, I can't have female friends because they're too catty or they're too jealous and all of stuff. It's like I've never. Both of us, we've never had experiences with women that were like that. So I'm like, I don't know what you guys are talking about, but we're gonna write this from this perspective.
My theory is all that drama they go through is because of men. And we don't, because so like they
center men.
All this jealousy and cattiness only comes when they're
competing for men. Yeah.
Yes.
I guess.
Because but yes, we did want a story that could just be a bunch of women who support each other, who love each other.
Very different personalities, drama, but we can all get along.
Yeah. And sisterhood in general, it's hard to say that it had anything to do with this book, only because us as sisters, I don't even think of us as sisters. I think of us as just one. I hate to say it. I hate to sound corny, but we really just like the egg split. I feel like it split, but it's still stuck together and we're still just one. So I think of us as like more soulmates than sisters. Yeah. We do also have another sister though. And we have a brother. And sibling relationships have always been really, really, really important to us. And so in this story, I do feel like in that way, even though they chose, I don't think chosen family is any less than, blood family.
Sure.
I feel like they chose a family for whatever reason. They didn't feel like they had that connection to someone else and they needed it. And we did experience this in college because we never pledged or anything, but a lot of people who did were people who felt like they didn't have, because we went to the same school, we roomed together, so we always had somebody with us, but some people didn't, and we felt like, I can see why you need this brethren around you, and that is something we relate to, even though it's not our experience.
Yeah, and it's called Zetas Till We Die because it's kind of a double entendre, but one of the meanings is just that, we're sisters until we die. Like, we're going to stay together through thick and thin. And that's usually, what sorority sister, that's what it's all about. And me personally, I could have never pledged because I don't really feel that way about anybody except her. But for them, it was fun to explore that because, like I said, like, I don't believe in unconditional love. I have conditions, so you need to treat me well and all that. So,
but
it
in
was
this
fun.
story,
I'm saying in this story, it made sense because, like you just said, for whatever reason, they all felt like they didn't have a solid family and they needed one. It worked out.
Gotcha. It's so hard to talk about thrillers and try to not
Yeah.
uh, tread into spoiler territory. So we're just gonna kind of dance around it. Um, this deals with a group of sisters, as we just talked about, and there's some trauma that happens, and then we move forward 10 years and this group of sisters gets back together. What was the impetus for kind of what the setup for the plot was going to be? Like how much brainstorming did you guys do in kind of coming up with the how you were going to set it, and then what mysteries would present, out of that situation?
I think it was, so we come up with black female sorority.
Mm-hmm.
Then we say, well, wouldn't it be interesting if I think then it comes, okay, so then we have our characters, and then we say, what if something happened, because we knew we wanted them to be like 30 years old type thing. So we're like, even though once you're in a sorority, you're always in a sorority.
Mm-hmm.
Life happens.
Yeah, what if something happened back then, right before they all spread their wings and went off into the real world? What if something happened that comes back up in the future? I guess that was the question. But how we got to the answer was, so we were just like, we're doing a story about sisterhood. Maybe something could have penetrated this sisterhood and made, should have split them apart, but it brought them even closer. And that kind of was the impetus for, I think we could say a little bit more. So it's that it was six sisters who were pledge sisters, so they're really close. One of their sisters
Got murdered.
at the end of senior year gets murdered, and all five of them that are remaining testify against the man that they believe did it, who was this weird stalker guy on campus. And in the present, so then it's 10 years later, he gets, so their testimony gets him, I think, life in prison.
Life in prison.
But then 10 years later, the girls are getting together to have their 10-year reunion. And a week before the party is supposed to happen, they find out through the news that he's been released. And it's not because they found him innocent. It's because of a complete technicality. He's getting off on appeal and he's out. And then they have their party and one of the sisters goes missing. And of course, they go to the worst thoughts and they're like, it's him. He's out. He's coming because we testified we're the reason he got life in prison. And he's probably
Right.
And it's too much of a coincidence that he picked the one girl who basically got him in like life in prison because she had basically got like very strong testimony.
Yeah. And I think that's all we had going in that sense before we started like doing our little outlining. But we knew it, like the main story. Actually, what I'm saying is what we knew, the girl who gets killed in the past, we knew we wanted her to still be a person.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
that's why we decided to have a dual perspective and
Dual timeline.
for her to tell her own story in the past timeline.
And what a great way to unravel that story, to see her perspective and to go back and forth. And it's sometimes when you do a dual timeline or multiple perspectives, you get to the point where the reader knows more than the characters in the book, and it becomes kind of awkward because you're like, wish you could shake the characters you're reading, think, no, this is going to happen, but you can't see it. But you guys avoid that. You really are careful with the way that you kind of give us readers crumbs, so that it doesn't seem like the reader is another character in the story looking kind of into a glass box almost. So I love that aspect of the book, that you tease it out, and it never jumps the shark, so to speak. Do, you said that you guys do very clean first drafts. Do you have most of these things kind of worked out in the drafting so that when you finish that first draft, you don't have big unresolved plot holes or things? Do you do any plot work after the fact?
No, unless it's something from our editor.
Yeah, our editor will get in there and say, usually it's about clarifying things and making sure something's not, for one of our books, that this thing isn't obvious or something like that. But no, with the plotting, because it's a thriller, is the most important thing to have for us done prior. And mainly character is what, and so that's why things change a lot. Because we're like, actually, Alexis wouldn't do this. She's more like this, and because this thing happened, I think she should start doing this. But the big beats, the big turns, the big reveals, I think for every story has stayed the same. And
yeah, because I'll just explain it how we do it, because this will put some clarity on it. Because it might sound odd, like, because the first draft is extremely clean, it's totally complete. If we wanted to turn it in, we call it a zero draft. If we wanted to turn it to our editor, like if we want a deadline, we could, but obviously we don't. We definitely do it 2 or 3 times.
Sure.
But what we call a zero draft is the first draft right after we do the outline. So we'll do the outline, and we will have maybe 1 or 2 conversations about it, just cleaning it up, making sure we agree on everything, noting character things, but it's very, very loose. Like it's literally like every character's name with 5 characteristics, just so we know generally who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, things are always added. But after that, Amber, since she's a screenwriter and it's very easy for her, she takes, like I said, we have a paragraph for every event, every plot point, every scene. She will draft it out into basically a script. So with a script, there's no description, there's no narration. It's literally just dialogue, and it's broken into scenes. So she does that step. So at that point, like from beginning to end, we have every single scene. So when it's my turn, I will just turn it into prose. So add description, narration, thoughts, introspection, anything like that. And then obviously there's probably things I need to change just for flow. But usually it's not. She does a very good job. And then after, that's what I call first draft. And then, or I'm sorry, zero draft. And then, zero draft and first draft. And then after that, we both give it a read through and just fixing very minor details like sentences, and
it's mainly writing we're focusing on at that point, not story.
Just the writing.
And then the last pass is more like, let's read it over as a reader and see if it's good.
Yeah, I like to listen to it. Like I'll just get on the app.
Yeah.
And then I'll just listen to it as a book. So I know it flows. And also I can catch any grammar mistakes because the person is going to read it wrong if it's wrong. And so on that front, it's very clean too. So
it's really, it's like all of it sounds, I guess, organized and cute, but it's really just to avoid the anxiety of I don't want to do it anymore. I get easily overwhelmed, and so like I said, if it was a mess at the end, even her, because aren't you still like this when you write alone, like you edit as you go?
Yeah,
because you just don't want to get up the next day and be like, I don't want to. Like it just needs to. It will probably be bad, but it needs to feel like you nailed it on the first go.
I love that idea that, when people think about co-writing with someone, there's an anxiety that comes with it because they're like, well, what if we both want to write the same scene, and we step on each other. But I love the idea that Amber kind of builds the skeleton, if you will, and then Danielle comes and puts flesh on the bones, so to speak. And then you both plot together in the beginning, and then you have your areas that each one of you do, and then you come through and edit together. That seems like the perfect working relationship that probably came with a lot of kicking and screaming.
It wasn't like that the first time.
I'll bet it wasn't.
It was a nightmare in that sense.
We kept going back and forth in the document.
Like we had over 1,000 comments to each other, meaning new comments, not threads, just individual comments.
And I think I like what you said about having the third voice, because I do think we still do write separately.
Oh yeah, and our separate stuff sounds nothing.
Yeah, our separate stuff doesn't sound like it doesn't sound alike, and it also kind of doesn't sound like our book together. So I think it is like a third narrator voice. Yeah,
that's so funny. So if we know anything about the publishing industry, This book has been off of your desk for quite a while, probably months, as it goes through the machinery of publishing. So, what are you guys working on now? I'm sure, with a big release like this, there's demand for something new. What are you guys working on now?
Well, luckily, there was a second book in this contract, so we've already finished the first draft of that. Our first draft of that.
Yeah, so zero
I was
draft.
about to say your zero draft or your first draft?
First.
The draft where we both
we
both touched
it. Kind of second. You did the zero. I did the first, and then you did.
Yeah, now we're just letting it sit because we don't have to turn it until November, so we're letting it sit for another month, and then in October we're both gonna do our final pass. So let's just call it done. Meaning it's about to be done. This one is another thriller,
leaning towards the horror side, which is different from anything we've done.
Yeah, and it's one of those where everything happens in one place, and people do die. And I'm trying to think how to say, because this one is a lot different in that sense. There actually is a dead body, but it's not a dead body that's like one of us is dead or one of us might die. Well, it is. Well, but I mean the inciting incident is,
it's not a past death that they're investigating,
or like a friend. How this one is, or like our second book, it was the mom. This one is, and our first one was more so one of the characters planning a murder.
This one is who died, and maybe we're in danger.
But that's not the that's not the question here. The question is, somebody died. Are we in danger?
Who is it?
At this cabin that we're staying in? That's kind of the story, but it's more of a psychological endeavor than a plot heavy.
More of a leaning into like locked room mystery, Agatha Christie almost.
Yes, but with the element of, I jokingly say it's like that mixed with Black Swan, where the character doesn't know what's happening, and are they hallucinating? Are they imagining things? Are the people who are around me, are they gaslighting me? Like, she can never figure out if what is happening, or if someone is conspiring, like she just can't figure it out. And then hopefully, the reader is acting as her and trying to figure it out too.
Love it.
Something's going on. Something's off here. That's kind of because something's off here.
We had a question come in from TW, friend of the show, and TW says, "What is the biggest change you did, or realization you had to make you better writers?"
Okay, I have two. Meaning, one is going to be about being a professional writer, so meaning being in the industry.
Okay,
it's going to be negative,
of course, but I just going to say you have to learn or accept, because you might already know this, that the emotional part of this is the hardest part. There becomes a point where writing is almost easy in comparison to dealing with the rejection, because the rejection never stops. You could be like us. We have 2 book contracts together, and there were 2 each, so 4 books, and we're at the point where we're going to start pitching for our next contract, and you could get a no. We actually got a no going into the second contract for a different book, but then we pitched something else and we got one. But it doesn't matter. Your agent might say, we can't go out with that. There is constant rejection, and so you just have to accept that part of it, and that you will be mourning things. You will be mourning ideas and stories and characters who feel like people for the rest of your life. And some stories you might not ever get to tell other than to your sister or to your diary. And you just have to combine with it. I mean, there are so many beyond successful writers who are mourning deaths often too. And then so more about what made me become a better writer is sort of that whole theme of what we've been saying with outlining. More so get rid of the word outlining, because I actually never thought, that's why you saw us hesitate. I don't really call it outlining, but I guess it really is. It's more, I like to say trust. I'm building trust with myself, because what I did as a kid author was let the anxiety of I don't know if I'll ever finish this, or I'm scared I won't finish this, or all of that get to me. It never stopped me, but it definitely slowed me down and made me just feel with so much. I think self-doubt is just the enemy of creating. And so now, I mean, I do complain to you sometimes, but I'm sort of working through my thoughts out loud. But I now know you've done it before. There are some stories that I will never finish, and that's fine, but I can do it. Like, I trust myself that I will finish the thing. And I think outlining tremendously helps that. Now, I know if okay, because let me say this. I used to hate the idea of outlining. Mine wasn't necessarily so much that I was going to be locked into something or it feels overwhelming. I hated it because I felt like once I outlined, I'd already written the story, and then now it's boring to have to write it. And I feel like I'm over it. I get over stuff really fast and really bad. Like, I can write something 1 month and finish it, and then the next month she'll ask me about it. I'm like, I don't know. It left my mind. I don't say that to be dismissive though. Like, I still love everything that I write. But yeah, I'm saying all that to say outlining is really, really good for you. It's not a bad word. It's not hard to do, and it's only going to help you like have confidence in your writing. And the more you write, the better you're going to get at writing. I don't even think writing faster is that grand of a thing. But in terms of if you have contracts, it might
just more
because life will get in the way. And so the quicker you can do it and then have time like us to let it sit and then I'll go back to it, it'll just help you live life.
I would just say mine is just that because before I was very afraid to put a lot of myself into it or to be very specific about things. And now I'm just like, I realize that being the more specific you are, the more of a broader audience you will affect. And that sounded so counterintuitive, but that's really the truth. The more I'm specific and intentional about things, the more people seem to connect to it.
Yeah. And I feel like that's probably why all of our books before we wrote together didn't really work, because a lot of agents and stuff who were rejecting us will always say, oh, the writing is really strong, or it's but we weren't really putting ourselves into it at all. We were kind of just writing
just whatever was fun.
Yeah, like what was fun, like what we wanted to read ourselves, but not considering that other people aren't going to connect. That's the thing they kept saying, just didn't connect to it. And for our first book, we wrote about a job that we had experience with, a character who was very similar to us on the surface. Like, we could put a lot of personal things into it, and so we've carried that through.
I love it. Excellent question, TW. Thank you for that. The new book is called Zetas Till We Die by Amber and Danielle Brown. This is a must-have if you like thrillers at all. Go grab it today. It's on sale today. Go visit your local bookstore. Support local books. If you don't have a great local bookstore in your town, we'll put links to it in the show notes where you can grab it from Amazon and from Audible. I'm assuming there's an audiobook version out today.
I just listened to a sample. It sounds good. It's good.
It does. I can't wait to grab it and listen to it. It's going to be so much fun. I love this book. I love what you guys are doing. Amber and Danielle, if people are just discovering you, is there a place online that is a central repository, a place where people can go connect with you, dig into your amazing back catalog, find out ways to stay in touch with news and that sort of stuff from you guys?
Yeah, it's just our names. It's really easy. AmberandDanielle.com with 2 D's. So Amber and spelled out Danielle.com. And we have, I think I have my Twitter up there. So like everything, that's like the central hub you could find if you want to find us on Instagram. That's where you can start.
Excellent. We'll link that up as well. Amber, Danielle, thank you so much for taking time to come on the show today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Much.